How you guys doing tonight? Good. I'm Raz. What I'm about to present to you, originally it was just a preface of my book. I wasn't going to put it in there, but I was told it was such a crazy story and truth that I had to put it in there. So it's actually the first chapter of my book, NETER, N-E-T-R. You can find it on Amazon. How many of you guys have ever heard of the inner earth or caves under the ground, like a network of caves? Anything like that? Anybody ever heard anything like that? Agartha is one name for it. I didn't really know anything about Agartha or the inner world, anything like that. When I went to Georgetown, Guyana in 2018, I went down there just to get some films in the Amazon jungle, and I wanted to spend some time in nature and think about my artistic career, having graduated from UCLA Film School. But what was supposed to be just a 6-month trip down into the Amazon became a trip in which my life was threatened on several occasions. What happened was I went down there, I went to Georgetown, started making plans to go to the Amazon. Guyana is right next to Brazil, right north of Brazil, and it shares the Amazon border with Brazil. So I went into Georgetown, Guyana, capital, and I started making plans to go into the jungle. I met these two Australians who had this rugged outback company, and they were really the only ones who were like professionally taking you into the jungle. You could like fly over, look at waterfalls, but it's completely undeveloped country. 73% of the country is undeveloped. Most of the people live right on the coast, just like Brazil. So there was only 2 Australian guys who had the courage to actually take you into the jungle. Now, as I was planning this trip, I made a girlfriend like on Tinder, and she started telling me like, no, don't go into the bush. Nobody goes. They call it the bush. Nobody goes into the bush. It's got malaria. It's got this. It's got that. It's got robbers and killers. Everybody in the country said, don't do it ever. So I didn't know anything about it. But people that cared about me said, don't do it, trust me. But I was like, you know what, I came here for adventure. Give me a break. How scary can it be? So I wound up, only me and this German tourist were the only ones that took the trip with the 2 Australian guys. And before we got in the van that would take us to this small helicopter they had that was flies off into the jungle, middle of the jungle, they made us sign this list of the most, the longest list of the deadliest things that I ever kill you. We're talking about caiman, we're talking about jaguars, we're talking about hawks and falcons, we're talking about anaconda snakes, we're talking about malaria. It went on and on. Giant spiders. Are you sure you want to sign? I was like, it was like, who is your emergency contact? Okay, you have to put your emergency contact down. Put my girlfriend that I had just made. And then they said, sign here that you're not going to sue us or nothing, no matter what happens. So anyway, I was feeling pretty lucky. Still wasn't scared at all at this point. So we went on the trip and we were in the jungle for 4 days. Everything was cool. Other than the Jeep they had, it was kind of rickety. It was kind of raggedy. They had to like at least once a day, they had to stop and fix the Jeep. And I mean, we're talking, it's bumpy and we're on cliffs. But anyway, he was doing fine. So on the 4th day, we were driving over this cliff. And I remember thinking that, how lucky I was to be looking at this view that, since, it was so scary, nobody wanted to do it. I was like, literally nobody on earth, or very few people on earth, have ever seen this beautiful view. And I was just marveling at that. And literally a second later, there was a jostling of the Jeep that was a lot harder than the regular jostling. And the driver's hair flew wild. I remember all these things. This is the very little I do remember. I remember this jostling, his hair flying wildly. The next thing I know, the Jeep had fallen over the cliff. I remember it falling off, but that literally is all I remember. I remember how long the roll was. So it had to be like 100 feet of bush and forest. And long story short, I woke up in the Amazon River and I didn't see the German, I didn't see the Australians. I still haven't seen them to this day, by the way. I don't know what happened to them. But anyway, I woke up in the river, bruised, swollen, battered, and just trying to figure out what the heck happened to me. I realized what was going on. I was like, okay, I'm in the water. And I started gathering myself to crawl out of the water. Right as I started to do that, I noticed in the water about 10, 15 feet behind me, a ripple of water started to come towards me. And I had remembered the stories of the caimans and the alligators they told me. So battered and bruised, I managed to crawl up into the to the bank. I was spending had to be about 3 weeks alone in the jungle. Luckily, I had looked up on some outback living sort of things, because I figured things might get rough out there. So I kind of knew what to eat and these sort of things, but it was ridiculously rough. I lost 20 pounds of weight. I literally thought I was just going to die out there. There were plenty of days I didn't eat at all. And then I remember looking out on a good view, and there was this huge tree, and it was literally like 4 or 5 times bigger than all the trees around it. I later find out that it's called a kapok tree. But I decided for whatever reason to just go to that tree. And, I guess it was an adventure, another adventure for me. I get to the tree after 3 days of walking, and I noticed on the tree like there's all kind of fruit, like huge fruit on it. You could like climb up it. It was like very easy to climb, made for climbing. And I saw all these fruits, so I figured let me go up and get some food, because I was pretty starving at that point. When I got to let's say the second level, I could see that there was this big nest, on 2 levels ahead of me, above me. So I thought it was interesting, and I wanted to check it out. I wound up going up there and seeing these huge, basically raptor eggs they wound up being, and these things were huge. And I was starving. I call myself a vegetarian, but I eat meat when I have to, and realizing how hungry I was, this is one of those times to get to eating meat. But it took me a while because I just started thinking about the baby birds, and I felt kind of guilty, But literally right when I was about to smash 2 eggs together, I saw something black in the distance coming at me in the horizon. After watching for about 10 seconds, I realized it wasn't a UFO, but it was a harpy eagle flying at me, the mother of these birds. So, remembering what they told me about the eagles and the falcons, about being a deadly thing, I immediately started rushing down to get off the tree as soon as possible. But by the time I got to the ground, it had literally just got there and it swooped right past me. You can see scars on my face actually from when it actually scratched me. I'm kind of blinded, I'm scared, but still, I got to get the heck out. It started swooping around the tree, and it swooped around 2 or 3 times, and I kind of saw it disappear at a certain point, so I just started taking off running. Kind of blinded, I'm falling, jostling, and all these sort of things, but I could hear it screeching through the trees at me, okay, this is scary. I didn't know birds could get this mad, but they can get this mad. They can get very mad. You mess with their children. So anyway, this thing is literally chasing me, and so after about 3 or 4, it felt like hours of running, 3 or 4 minutes. I didn't realize that this tree was near an edge. It was like a waterfall, and then it was just a cliff with a waterfall nearby. And so when I'm running, I kind of see the water and the waterfall going, but I don't really realize that in an instant I fell over the cliff, and once again I'm rolling down. So this time, and I literally, this time when I woke up, I was in the makeshift hut of a Makushi Indian. These are one of the Amazonian Indians. As a matter of fact, they're the Indians, if you Google, they're the ones that have a story of the inner earth. Apparently, the most striking thing about them is that they are supposed to be the guardsmen of this gate to the inner world. It's in their tradition for hundreds of years, thousands of years, but I stayed there for about 3 months, getting nursed up by the medicine woman. They speak Portuguese, which I spoke as well. They spoke Latin as well, a couple of languages. So luckily I was able to communicate with them, kind of learn the language a bit. They started thinking I was a Kanema, which is basically this outsider entity that basically causes trouble, causes chaos, or when you get lost alone in the jungle, these kanema are supposed to take you. So they're scary individuals. The strangest thing about the Kanema, the thing I like the most, is that apparently they can make fireballs in their hand, and they can shapeshift. And I met people who claimed that they saw one make a fireball. But over time, they realized I was cool, and they told me the culture, and they told me about that cave to the underworld. You told me about I made another girlfriend, and she told me about that cave to the underworld. And she was like, but nobody's ever gone there. And I was like, man, how about I go there and actually go to the underworld? She called me crazy and all this. I was like, would you do it? If I did it, would you give me a kiss when I came back? And she was like, yeah, okay, I'll give you a kiss. So I started literally making plans, and 2-3 days later, she realized I'm serious, and she was like, no, I'm not kissing you, I'm not doing anything, don't go. But again, the adventure was in my blood. I came there for adventure, and I heard something interesting as a cage in underwear. Why would I stop now? So I made plans. I talked to one of the elders. They packed up some food for me, told me about what I should expect. They told me that there would be large areas as big as stadiums. They talked about some kind of sun on the underground. They talked about an area where it would be like some sort of levitation, or I would be lightless, and all these sort of things, which all right, whatever, that's wild. But you guys haven't gone in years, that's just part of your legend. Little did I know when I actually went, I traveled down this cave for 2 days, 2.5 days, and everything they told me about was actually real. I mean, I came to some areas that were so big, it was like you could fit multiple football stadiums in them, like 2, 3, 4. It was a huge area. I mean, we're talking about after a day of walking just in this cave on the ground, all of a sudden these huge areas, multiple huge plateaus, multiple areas where there are trees growing underground, multiple areas where there were like light, like areas where the light would come in, and it was just, life would just be bursting all around just these little cracks of the sun. So it was some wild stuff. I actually saw, there was places where they told me some berries would be growing, some food, and I could eat that food, so I didn't have to pack so much. Long story short, it was really remarkable. I suggest you guys all look into any stories or accounts of like underground network of caves and etc., because it's actually absolutely real. The whole part about the inner world, because they told me like there would be like reptilian type men that were guarding these gates, and only if I was a good person would they let me in and all this stuff. Unfortunately, I never got to all that because on my third day there, I ran into these big canopus jars, very old, ancient-looking vases, like camouflaged in the dirt. And I just happened to notice them, and I started to remember about the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I was like, you know what? There might be, who knows how long ago this stuff goes back. This might be something important. This might be something worth, taking back. So I told myself, a trip to the underworld could wait. I stuffed those. I opened the canopus jars. They wound up being papyri scrolls of an ancient script. I couldn't realize what it was. I didn't know what it was. It wound up being what's called the early alphabet, which is our Proto-Semitic script, is what archaeologists call it. It's one of the, if not the oldest script known throughout the world. It's only on like caves, but it's in multiple caves throughout the world. There's a whole alphabet. They call it the early alphabet. So it was written in this early alphabet in NETER, the hieroglyphs of ancient Egypt. So I decided to take these scripts back. This was 2018 when I went there. By the time I came back, and I went back up, I decided I would try to transcribe these notes myself because I'm a lover of ancient Egypt, and I was like, this would be a great chance to get to know these scripts. And also, I don't want to give anybody credit for this stuff. I want to make sure I bring these findings to the world. And so I came back, and it was 2020 when I came back to America. And obviously COVID hit, gave me a lot of time to to transcribe these things. And basically what I came up with was, what was in the script was what I consider the oldest hero journey or mythic savior, Christ figure savior in the world. When I started to look into the story of Chrisja, basically every hero journey from Zeus to Gilgamesh, or Hercules, Perseus, even things like Buddha, Christ, Krishna, you name it, like the exact same things they were saying, meaning of the same things they were going through, point by point. It was like, it was happening here. And I knew that it was, and the timeline they were talking about here is 25,000 years ago, by the way, which would be a whole procession of the equinox. So I knew that this was ancient. And also it changed me, because in this script you get this epic story about the son of the sun being created in order to stop this evil god that developed in the underworld and who started making these evil plans to mess up the earth and destroy humanity. And he created this chain where he would corrupt your soul, and instead of your soul reincarnating properly, he would be able to use it in one of his undead zombies in the underworld that he was going to eventually invade the earth with these undead demon, the devils, by corrupting the souls of humans by making them turn to evil. So this character Chrisja is created by the God of wisdom in order to be born on the earth and stop all the evil minions that this evil God has created. Firstly, most importantly, the evil emperor, who kind of represents greed, and in many ways, I updated the story. He represents the worst of capitalism, the worst where you don't care what you're doing to get that dollar. You know, you'll crush anyone to get that money. That's the emperor of the story. And Chrisja, you know, he becomes a king. He gets run out of his country. The country gets colonized. He goes around the world with these three kings, and they learn a lot about heroism, courage, etc. The seven chakras, you name it. Eventually, for him to come back, reclaim his homeland, and declare war on the evil emperor. And throughout this story, as I said, you're getting a lot. It's more than just this epic myth. It's a lot of visionary fiction, spiritual truths, the same sort of things you would get from a Christ or Buddha or Krishna. Chrisja, as being this advented character, he has transcendental wisdom. And so it's something I've taken to heart now. I believe we all have the opportunity to find our heroic selves. You can either be your weak victim self and let the things be a side character in your own story and be upset about what's happening and where, oh, look at this on the news. Or you can claim your own power, your own courage, you know, and be your own heroic version. Make a change in your own life, make a change in your community's life, and, you know, take back some of the vigor and vitality that it is to have this gift of life. So thank you. I appreciate you guys' time.